Did you know that over 40 million people around the world are trapped in some form of captivity? What if I told you that I was one of them? But here's the thing, my captivity wasn't what you'd expect. Because sometimes captivity isn't physical. Sometimes the chains are invisible. Captivity. It's a word that brings to mind bars, chains, and locked doors. But my story is different. My prison wasn't made of steel. It was woven out of manipulation, control, and fear. For years, I lived in a world where every decision I made, every thought I had, was monitored and shaped by someone else. You see, not all prisons are physical. Mine was psychological, and by the time I realized it, I was already in too deep. It started slowly. At first, I didn't even notice the control creeping into my life. It was just small things, who I spent time with, what I was allowed to say, how I dressed. I thought it was normal, but soon, I was no longer living for myself. I was living for someone else, bending to their will, silencing my voice. The worst part? I didn't even see it happening. It wasn't until I looked back and realized I hadn't made a single decision for myself in years that I knew. I was a prisoner. Every day felt like I was walking on eggshells. My thoughts were no longer my own. Don't make them angry. Don't say the wrong thing. Those were the rules I lived by. If I broke them, the consequences were severe, not physically but psychologically. I was isolated, cut off from friends and family. My world became smaller and smaller until I had no one left but the person controlling me. I was trapped in a relationship where fear dictated my every move. The chains weren't visible to anyone else, but they were there, and they were tightening. The breaking point came one night. It wasn't a physical escape, but a mental one. There was no dramatic confrontation, no rescue. Instead, it was a quiet moment of clarity. I was in the middle of an argument, being torn down again, when something in me shifted. I looked in the mirror and realized I didn't even recognize the person staring back at me. I wasn't me anymore. I had become someone else's puppet. And I knew in that moment, if I didn't get out, I would lose myself entirely. That was the moment I decided to fight. Not with fists or anger, but with something far more powerful, my mind. I began planning my escape, not from a physical place, but from the psychological prison that had held me captive for years. Breaking free wasn't easy. I had to rebuild from scratch, learn how to think for myself again, how to trust my instincts, how to make my own decisions without fear. But I did it. I escaped the chains that no one else could see. And in the end, I learned that captivity comes in many forms. Whether it's physical or mental, the fight for freedom is the same. It's about reclaiming control of your own life, your own mind, and never letting anyone take that from you again. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever felt trapped by someone or something, I want you to know you're not alone. You have the power to break free.